And we are now live. Welcome to Echo Rift. I'm Don.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the creators of Echo Rift Comics.
And this time on Echo Rift, the boys talk about Faction from the Kiwi. Son of a bitch. Can we fix this?
Yeah, we'll just start over again, and then I'll just clip this all part out.
It's Faction, right?
Faction.
I was thinking Fraction.
Yeah, Faction Kiwi Comic Anthology.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna play the music again. Welcome to Echo Rift. I'm Don.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the creators of Echo Rift Comics.
This time on Echo Rift, the boys talk about Faction Kiwi Anthology. That's from New Zealand to you and me. And Southern Bastards by Image.
Yeah, Faction Comics. So I was contacted by Damon Keane, who is presumably from New Zealand, and they call themselves Kiwis. They really do. I didn't really. I don't know where that comes from. I guess the fruit or whatever. But he had said, hey, we make these awesome comic anthologies because we've got this burgeoning comic talent thing happening down here, and can we send some to you? So I was like, I like comics, so yeah, send them to me. And we received these three really handsome. I think that's the first thing I would say about them. Three really handsome. They're like graphic novelettes, maybe. They're square bounds, and they are. They're exactly as he said. They're these anthologies. Each one contains anywhere between, I think, 12 and 15 or 16 different comics from different creators. And I found it really compelling. I really enjoyed a lot of the stories that were in here. And I think that I'll honestly say, from a critical standpoint, I think they get better by the third one. I don't know if the third one is available on Comixology yet, but the first one was. It's not even that it wasn't as good. It's that it was a lot more comics with fewer pages. And I noticed that the pattern seems to be in the second and third volumes of this anthology that there are fewer stories that have more meat to them. And I think, just as a comic reader, I guess in the United States we don't read a lot of anthologies. I mean, we have Dark Horse Presents, but it's not a method of reading comics that I'm used to. So it could also be my reaction to that. But yeah, the artwork the artwork is stunning and varied. I mean, it goes from comedy. All of it's a little bit twisted. There's some the comedy ones in here are like very off-center sense of humor, to very dramatic. There's some of them are painted. Others are more in the style of the comics that you'd run into in a regular comic book store, maybe from Dark Horse or Image. In each issue, though, there were standout ones. Damon Keane, who's the person who contacted me, and I'm not just saying this because he contacted me, his story in the first and second one were my favorite of both. And particularly the second one, he has a story called Ek-Type that it's a science fiction story. Both stories feature astronauts, which I'm a fan of astronaut comics. And I really enjoyed the second one. I mean, it's good. It's a good sci-fi story, and I would say it's 12 to 15 pages long, and it's compelling. I really enjoyed it. And there's another one, I think, that's in both the second and third one, called The Saurian Era by Corey Mathis. And that's like dinosaurs and people. And the one thing I'll say about that is I want to read a graphic novel of it, and I'll have to look online and see if it's posted anywhere. But it seemed like they were excerpts from a larger story. So I really liked the artwork, though. It was very colorful and very well drawn. And I really enjoyed all of them. And any listeners of ours know when we did our Moth City episode, Tim Gibson's also from New Zealand, and in the third issue, or the third volume of the anthology, he kicks it off with a story that he previewed for us back when we did our episode that shows the sort of the origin of Governor McCall from Moth City. And that's the first story in the third anthology. But I really, really like them. I'll have to get them to you, Mike, so you can check them out. And I see that they're available on Comixology, the first two volumes. And you can also go to their website, which is factioncomics.co.nz. and you can see more comics there. And you can even buy your own copies in New Zealand dollars, but I'm sure your credit card would take care of that for you.
I know I saw them at your house, and you hadn't even presented them to me yet, but I happened to see them on your desk, and I was struck by them from a distance. There was one head on the back of it was a like a cross section of the Mystery Machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's one of those sort of the off center comedy stories.
Yeah, and even flipping it over, I was just really impressed with not just the quality of the drawings that was evident right then and there, but the quality of the graphic design of the book itself. And like you always say things like you can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't, but you can judge a cover by its cover, and that alone was sharp. And then you were telling me about I think it was the first of the two stories. That you mentioned about
Oh yeah, the
spacefaring
David
character.
Keane ones. Yeah,
Yeah, the one story. I mean, I actually wanted to stop you because it was such an impressive science fiction concept. It was truly original, and it in what you were describing had like some of the creepy, bizarro horror elements that I like in standalone science fiction.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like I would compare what you described in the same vein as Moon, which is a movie you haven't seen yet.
No, I still haven't. We'll have to make an episode of it so I can make sure I
Um,
see it.
but I think he would appreciate what I said there. Um,
And the artwork is his artwork. I really like it. It's in the vein of it's the black spotting style that's in the vein of Francavilla or Mike Mignola. Not quite as stylized, but I really his artwork really compelled me. Even the coloring. I mean, it's all one color pretty much. It's just different shades of one color, and that's just. In fact, so's the piece that's in the first one, but it's a gray color. And then just again being about astronauts. But I love science fiction, and this does actually have science fiction and horror in it. It has fantasy. It even has some anime styled stuff. So it's a really great variety, and the prices on Comixology were really reasonable. I think it was 99 cents for the first one and maybe $2 for the second. So it's well worth checking out. I really like it. But when you talk about the packaging, I mean, even when you line them up, like again, they're probably half the thickness of a graphic novel, and I noticed that they also get thicker as they progress in volume numbers. But even on a shelf, like they bothered to make sure that the binding lines up. And that bothers me when it doesn't. Like, I can't get over how often I see like Marvel comics or DC comics, and they can't even take the time to line up the bindings. And it's really sharp, and the binding's red, and the back is red, so it really stands out. Like you said, it would draw your eye in a room or in a comic book store even. And I'm really impressed with everything about it. It's really well done, and I highly recommend it.
cool. Can't wait to read it.
So then another independent, because these are all independent comics, obviously, and we sat down and we read.
Before you go on, it
Yes.
is very cool that we've been able to communicate with people from around the world, literally.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
that's a pretty neat concept of this whole enterprise.
Yeah, it is, and I noticed that even when I look. I mean, we don't ever talk about the show as far as the back end of it, but it's very neat to look at our downloads and see people all over the world downloading it. And New Zealand is one of the places where we do see. I mean, I know Tim Gibson is there, and I presume he listens, or at least occasionally listens. We've talked back and forth quite a bit. And but maybe it was because we covered Moth City or whatever. But it's neat to see that there's people from New Zealand and Australia and Israel and all these other places in South America listening to us, even places where I would have otherwise assumed that English was a second language. But I guess that doesn't make a difference because it doesn't need to be to the listener who downloaded the podcast. So the comic that we read was a comic that I picked up on face value when it first came out. It was more than 4 months ago. They haven't been coming out every month, and it's called Southern Bastards by Jason Aaron and Jason Latour. And that name alone drew me to it. And I don't know, I think Jason Aaron's name is what made me pick it up. And I'm really glad I did. I'm really anxious to hear what you think of it, though, because although you went and read it and you told me you liked the first issue, we deliberately haven't talked about it since, to get here to the show. But I finally got down. I had bought the second and third issue, finally sat down and read them, was fortunate enough to see that the fourth issue, which is the end of the first story arc, had just come out this past Wednesday, and I eagerly raced to read it.
Yeah, when you told me the title, I said, "My word!" I said, "There's no way I'm reading that." I said, "There's just no way that I'm reading that, Don."
Next, I'll be asking you to read Sex Criminals.
Sex Criminals.
We won't be reading that one.
So no, all kidding aside, the cover. It's talking about judging a book by its cover. The cover of the first issue is a bunch of really thick-looking characters. I don't want to say Southern, but I think Southern applies.
Yeah.
Very hillbilly-ish looking. And Southern as in Southern United States, not Southern Hemisphere.
Right.
And I wasn't sure what to make of it. The first image of the book is a dog taking a dump.
Yeah.
Which again, like title and then first page.
Setting a tone.
Yeah, like in any case, it ends up being. It reminded me of HBO style television.
Yeah.
It's got a very it gets neck deep in a world, not necessarily a real world. It's probably pretty hyperbolic, but the setting of the town, I forget the name. Craw.
Yeah, it's Craw County, Alabama.
Craw County, Alabama. It's a dangerous place, and one of the things I really like about it, and the HBO shows have been almost entirely this, is just suspense stories.
Yeah, and it is the way the suspense builds, and I think it even starts with the imagery that you see. I mean, you see this pickup truck, or maybe it's even a U-Haul, like coming down this country road. You see the dog pooping by the side of the road, and then the dog's barking and yelling at barking at the car as it passes, and you see signs for churches and other things, and the home of the Runnin' Rebs football team, and it really sort of sets this tone. And it's this, you feel like, I mean, Jason Latour's art and the coloring is really impressive because it feels hot, and it feels sweaty, it feels sort of broken down a little bit, like some southern towns I've been to. And it's not to say broken down like it isn't cared for or loved, but there aren't brand new developments anywhere, or at least not in the town center. And it really just sucks you in. And I was really impressed at how immersive it was, and how I heard the southern accents. Now, I know in the end of the first issue, both Jason Latour and Jason Aaron write a little essay about why they're doing this, and they're both from the South, and they talk about how they moved away and they swore they hated it, and once they moved away, they realized they loved it, and they've come to grips with the fact that it's this wonderful, beautiful place full of polite people and really dark things, and that's sort of the tale they're trying to tell.
Just like Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, Portland.
Yeah, so
where Bendis and Fraction and those guys are hanging out instead.
So yeah, one of the I don't know what the mind of the writer is, so I won't claim to know it, but and the artist, but there's a lot of elements in this visually that I found I don't know, more advanced than a lot of what I've seen in comics. And that's like, you know how there's this continuous image of that dog?
Yeah.
The dog is a constant presence. I'm not even sure whose dog it is. It's like the dog is reflective of the town somehow.
Yeah.
Like the sort of the
or the
raw,
South.
I guess, but like I don't know if I'd go that far, because the big town Birmingham that he moved to is considered light years away from Craw County, and by he, I'm talking about the guy who has returned to the town.
Yeah, Earl Tubb. This story opens with a guy returning to town to clean up the house that his father lived in and his uncle had been living in. And now the father died years earlier, and the uncle is now going into a home, and it's his job to clean up the house and put it on the market.
Yeah, and he runs into, well, he actually goes, I thought it was interesting, the idea that the house has, his father's grave is actually on the property of his home.
Yeah.
Which is a little eerie, but... how do you sell that? How do you sell that house? But I like when stories have some magic to them. And the one element that I would describe as sort of magical in this was the idea that very early on, you're presented with the idea that a tree has grown up out of the father's grave, and there's almost an implication that it's grown faster than a tree should grow.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the son is surprised by its presence in the sheer size of the tree.
Yeah, and there is that sort of and there's a lot of that, and I think it goes back to the sort of symbolism that we were talking about earlier. I think that there's so much. It is really just a step above a lot of the stuff that you see, because there's the symbolism, like we talked about, this dog that appears in all four issues. There's the tree, which is a huge part of the story. Not just that it's there, but the tree is symbolic of him. I mean, at one point he tries to chop it down because it reminds him of his dad. Because the story is just such a slow boil. Your information is being revealed to you very slowly. In some ways, it's a story that you've heard before, because it's got the boss type character who runs the town, and it's got a last man standing sort of element to it. But it's somehow literary because of the way that it's presented and the way the information is revealed. The main character, Earl, you're not sure, he's making these phone calls to someone and it's getting their message. He's leaving the messages, and the story takes place over days. And I know at least once I started to wonder, is he really calling somebody? Like, what kind of story is this? And there's just, I'm trying to think, there's other stuff than the tree. I mean, the dog.
The idea of the tree is that it's implied initially and early, which is the thing I say about the infusion of magic. It's implied that the tree is the bat that his father was buried with, and the bat is what apparently the father used, at least on one occasion, it would seem many occasions, as a weapon for enforcing justice and order in the town.
Yeah, his father's this famous figure from the past who was the chief of police, I think, or at least a police officer who brought sort of justice to the town, like local man justice. And he's got this legend that looms large. And Earl has a legend too, because he was the star quarterback. And I know I've heard, I mean, I can't relate to it, but there's been whole shows dedicated to how important, high school football is in the South, and I know in Texas too. And so that's a part of this story. And yeah, there's this, and it's a lot of it's about Earl living in the shadow of his father, trying to reject the shadow of his father, not to be his father while being his father, recognizing that his father might have been doing the right thing, or was he? It's a very deep story.
Yeah, and the idea of the football team is revealed in the first frame as well. That's on the sign that the dog is in front of. It has the I forget, it's like 5-year champion Rebels.
Yeah.
The Rebels are the name of the local football team. And that just felt like, I mean, part of me kind of bristled at the idea of the continuous, long before this story, but the sort of demonizing of some of these traditions as somehow infused with monstrous evil.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with. I mean, I'm an adult enough to handle it. But the idea that the football team is almost this proving ground for the organized criminals that grow up underneath the coach, who is essentially running the town.
Yeah, it's like his mafia. Yeah, I mean, and he's even using the high school students to do his dirty work, because the sort of thing that sets the violence. I mean, all stories are anticipation of violence. The violence that sets the story in motion is Earl witnesses this guy come in, and he's like kind of a junkie. He's a loser, and he wants to see the coach, and we don't, as the readers, we don't know who the coach is, or basically this guy's going to get, his name's Rusty. This guy's going to get beat up by, I guess he's one of the football players, or he's just out of high school, but he's got other football players that are on the team with him, and they try to hurt him badly, like hurt him with a gun, and Earl steps in and saves him, and the guy is furious that he did that. So that's sort of the inciting violence of the story that propels through the rest of the 4 issues.
You know what's cool too is that it's so well drawn, like it's so appropriate to the style of the story. The drawings are largely photorealistic, and they're not. None of the characters are drawn too large or too muscular or too fat or too anything.
Yeah.
Too comically. He does a very good job of actually drawing faces that are natural. Like, there are no attractive people in the entire story except for, if I'm not mistaken, the character that's in the last frame of the epilogue.
Yeah, yeah,
He's like the
and
first attractive character depicted on the pages of the book.
yeah, because even the because everybody you run into, I mean, you can recognize that the one sort of street tough guy might look cool to some people because he's got like he's either got like the word rebel or Confederate flag tattooed on his neck, and he's like got a bandana and the goatee and everything. But he's not. He's not. He still looks like sort of someone who's going to grow up to be a real loser, even if he's only 19 or 20. And I really like the way. The other thing I thought about, and it goes along with what you're saying about photorealistic, photorealistic in the way, because obviously there's still drawings, line drawings, and symbols and everything. But I felt like all the faces I saw were faces I've seen before. Like they're kinds of faces, if that makes sense. Like it's the kind of face certain people have, and there was something familiar looking to me about the different characters. Even the kid, there's a kid Tad who would come to Earl's house when his uncle lived there to watch television because his grandmother wouldn't let him, and he even had this sort of gawky, he just had this perfect gawky nerd teenager, nobody actually, not even teenager, like preteen pubescent awkwardness to him. And it was just everything in the way his posture in the scenes are. He's hanging from trees, but he's a little too big for that. So it's just it was really, but none of this is described, like, by the way, like this is all just in the pictures. Like the story's telling one thing and the visuals are backing it up. And I have such an appreciation for storytelling that complicated and that well crafted, because this really is. And I'll have to admit, I think that some of these image titles that come out as independent titles, particularly by the bigger names like Jason Aaron, some of them I wonder if they're really just being put out to be put out, and maybe, and I'm not trying to, I don't know how to explain it because I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing the creative effort that goes into it, but this just among the ones I've read recently in this crop of image in the last 3 years, this just seemed really top notch in its depth. And like I said, there's this literary quality to it that it really impresses me.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the continuous sense of suspense. I mean, the character basically, by picking a fight, sets off this, sort of ignites this fuse, and it's only a matter of time before things get like absolutely deadly. And they pretty much start out there, but it's only a matter of time before his problems are greater than he can overcome, and the amount of time he intends to spend in the town, which is as short as possible, but longer than he can afford.
Yeah, and Earl won't let it go, and part of this is done in flashbacks because we learn that Earl left town to get away from his dad, and this is the first time he's been back since, and he's an older man. I mean, you get the impression he's in his at least late 40s, but probably 50s.
Yeah, he's in his 50s. He left for Vietnam, so he's in his 50s or maybe even 60s.
Yeah, and that's again another thing, but yet he's still the big burly, like sleeve rolled up, like lumberjack looking guy, which is kind of what you expect. I mean, it's sort of a stereotype, but you kind of expect there to be certain Southern guys that would still be the big giant quarterback looking guy or running back. I forget what he was, but he he kept all that. But by the end, you talk about the anticipation of violence. By the end of that third issue, I was so emotional. Like I was so wrapped up in the story and some of the things that happen in the story that something happens at the end. I mean, every one of these issues has fantastic cliffhangers, like you would expect from good, episodic comics. But what happens at the end of the third one is just so infuriating, and I had to wait a few days to read it. I mean, it wasn't long. And I think there was 2 months between the third and fourth issue if you had been reading along, so I'm glad I didn't have to wait that long. But I was so wrapped up and angry, and I had so many expectations for what I expected to happen next, what I needed to happen next to like make me happy. And again, I can't, it's been a while since I read a comic that really had me wrapped up like that.
Don, you wanted justice. You were
That's
willing
exactly
to get your
what I want.
justice at the end of a bat, Don.
Yeah, or a big giant walking stick. And that's one of the other things that's interesting about the story is some things happen that I'm not sure if they are happening. And I don't mean I'm not sure I'm happening. I don't think that this is one of those unreliable storyteller things. But there's a moment in this story, I think it's in the second issue, where I started to wonder, is this going to be like a superhero story? And it doesn't. It isn't that kind of story. But some fantastic, it's the magic you talk about. Some magical things happen. Not too many. One or two magical things happen that really set the story into it keeps you on your edge and keeps you on your toes and in not knowing what to expect next.
If you liked, yeah, what was that? It was the HBO series last year,
True Detective.
True Detective. This had a lot of the elements, the flavor of that, and I'm not comparing them in any way that one inspired the other. I mean that the combination of being set in the South, being sort of crime related in both cases, being about and there is magic within True Detective.
Oh yeah.
There's either that or there's insanity.
Right.
It's never entirely clear. But the bottom line is characters are seeing things that are not necessarily, of a natural origin.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if they are of a natural origin, what the meaning they take from it is even greater, and it doesn't matter. Which is also always interesting, magical storytelling to me. Is this a magic stick, or is this guy decided it's his magic stick, and that's
But
what's
I want to read about the magic stick. Don alluded. Don might have spoiled, but didn't through his clear choice of words. Magic. Jason Aaron, check this. This guy was talking about us. And
this northern bastard is skulking about my comic. It said magic stick.
He summed it up.
Son of a bitch.
That and his laser swords.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not gonna. We debated in the beginning talking about the ending. This is a story that you read to the end, and it really delivers in the end. And I'm not going to say more than that because I think you should read it yourself. I don't even think there's any value in saying, okay, stop. If you haven't read it, go read it, and then if you have, stick with us. Maybe later if people contact us on Twitter or letters if you want to hear us discuss the ending, because I think there's a lot to talk about there. But I love a story that blows your doors off. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, that's sort of a dumb thing to say, but I am so impressed with a story that you get to the ends and it just sends a lightning bolt through the rest of the story. We've talked about that with Asimov. Asimov has those 16 books that he's tied together, or whatever it was, 14 or 16 books, and something happens in the last book that just knots everything together and makes you look back on everything you've read differently, and makes you reconsider everything you've thought about the story that you've seen so far. And it's not like a Night Shyamalan ending, but it's a really powerful ending, and it's really something that you want to experience for yourself. And I know this is coming out in trade. I don't think Amazon had a date on it, but I would hunt down the single issues, or if you've got to, you can't find them at the comic book store, just go on Comixology and get them, or get them at Image's site.
Well, and unless I'm mistaken, it's the end of an arc, right? I mean,
correct.
More. So this isn't even like the end of the story. It's just a very bold direction that the story is going to have to take as a result of the events that unfold.
And that's what I hope. The only thing I'm afraid of, because I'm so interested in this town now, I'm so invested in it. I was talking to somebody, I think it was Dan, who had said that he was under the impression that this might be a series of vignettes about the South. But I'll be crushed if we don't see a continuation of this story. So I'm hoping, I don't know where he got that from. I didn't get to look it up because when I was thinking of looking it up, I didn't want anything spoiled for me. But I hope that this story stays in Craw County with the same characters, because I desperately want to see what happens and how this story proceeds, because I'm so fascinated with everything that world that's been built. I would be crushed if it went away so that a story could be told in some other place.
If it continues the way I think it's going to, it's going to be taking a very bold new direction, and the danger looks like it's going to get a lot greater.
Yeah, and I'm really excited because it also looks like it's going to get really interesting, not just greater, but I think it's going to get really powerful, and I think that there's going to be, the scales will be amped in such a way that I just think that it's going to be a classic. I don't see this one ever disappointing.
Bring the noise, Don.
Bring it. All right, I think that's our show. Check out our YouTube channel. We've been posting more YouTubes there lately, and you should check that out. It's youtube.com/Echo Rift, and you can leave comments, and also you can subscribe. We've been doing Doctor Who episode reviews there, So why don't you go check that out and show us that you're listening and talk to us there. You have anything else, Mike?
That's all done.
All right. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
This has been an Echo Riff production. Go to echoriff.com to learn more.
And that's a wrap. You can press stop. I think we did a good job with that, and we did a good job not needing to spoil it.
Yeah, I agree. I hit the mute button to sneeze, and I couldn't get it back.
Yeah, remember the mute button on that? Like, I wish you just held it, and then when you let go, it went off of unmute, but you have to, like, double tap it. But it was funny, when your audio came back on for me, it was at a perfect spot. Like, I'll be able to splice that perfectly.
All right, so now I got to do file export, right?
Yeah.
File export.
And I'm not even going to try to get this out for tomorrow. I'll wait and put it out later. But get the file to me so I have it, because I could work on it in the morning. I'll send Damon a note and let him know that we did indeed discuss his comic.
What's today's date?
Today is the 23rd.
09 23. It's exporting.
But yeah, I was able to use that. Go ahead.
What are we doing? It's something we're gonna have to either start. I mean, tonight we had all kinds of problems, so it's gonna put us on a weird posture. But I'm like lost with the cadence of our recording, and I don't know like I'm not gonna overanalyze it, but we've changed stuff subtly that like, let's put it this way, it was ingrained in me. I would go as far as to say I think it worked very well because it was very good, but like, I don't want to make a value judgment. I'll say this, that I'm not even, stuff doesn't roll off anymore. Like the beginning of the show doesn't even sound like, I'd have to go back and listen. Like there was a time when I knew it intrinsically, like it was a part of what we would do, and now like it feels like, I don't know, like it doesn't even feel right where we're coming in on stuff.
Well,
like,
yeah, we
you say your part, then I say my part, then it's like, and I don't know, maybe it's these like something's not right.
Well, no, I mean, no, the intro did get shorter. I mean, it's been shorter for a while, but not that long. Well, no.
No, but I mean, what I'm saying is it's been a long time. I can tell you it's been a long time since I felt like natural in the recording process. Like I'm, and it's not getting better for me is what I'm saying. It's like, it's stilted. Like I part of it is probably us not being in the same room. Part of it's that the opening doesn't sound right in my ears. Like it sounds like it. That's all I'm saying is like it happened tonight, and like it's like the muscle memory is gone, and that I don't think that's good.
Well, yeah, and we need to fix that. Well, we can go back and figure out, I mean, what it was. I mean, there was a point, I mean, we changed at episode 200. I mean, we changed away from, was it since then when we changed away from the Beneath Philadelphia stuff?
Probably, I mean, probably. But it's like, I feel like it's probably changed 5 times within there. Like, I could be wrong about that. All I'm saying is there was a time when we started the show and I was like rocking and rolling. Like the words coming out of my mouth, I can't speak for you. The words coming out of my mouth led me into what you would say, then that led me back into what I would be saying, and our conversations start off, and like all I'm saying is it's an effort to keep the conversation going, and like sounding natural and relaxed and everything.
Right.
Like even at the when you were talking about the uh, the faction stuff, like maybe it's we're not prepping enough before the shows, like having a conversation. Like I don't even know if that's it. Like I wanted to join in on that conversation, and it's not your fault, but I couldn't, and then it was over, and I wasn't even sure we were moving on to the next thing, and like it's again, I don't know, there's something not again like let's see how the next one goes, but we're definitely. I just don't. I don't find. I can't imagine that it is like. I can't put myself outside of the experience of being one of the people recording this.
Right.
But it doesn't. It is important. It should not feel this way to either of us.
No, I agree.
So that's something we gotta figure out. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying, like, hang on, this thing's done. I mean, it doesn't help to be sitting on a concrete floor. There's a ton of things going on, but these were things that existed before tonight too. Like my voice doesn't even, like. I guess I got to put the other headphones back on because I can hear my voice through my head. That's probably a problem. I can't tell if the volume's right anymore. Like I've never figured out this microphone. Like. It's just, you know what it is? I think the bottom line is there's like every single thing about the way I'm involved with this show is different. My microphone's different. My room's different. My computer's different. The stuff I had to do before is different. Like the what we say is different. It's not this. For all intents and purposes, it's an entirely different experience. So that might all be part of it. Like I'm as you can tell, I'm thinking through this as I'm talking, but I'm realizing nothing about the experience is the same, and I definitely feel like that affects the quality of what we're doing.
Yeah,